Okay, this is a lecture that's a continuation of our discussion of exchange theory, and we focused upon U.S. Actions and policy in the Middle East historically, and we just finished up the Iraq invasion war. So, what I want to talk about, after we talked about the many ways of making money off of war, I want to talk about war profiteering versus supporting U.S. troops who are sacrificing and putting their lives at risk fighting a war. Okay, all right. These are in opposition to each other. War profiteering versus supporting the troops. Now, the Commission on War Contracting study found, quote, in addition to contingency contracting, leads to massive waste, fraud, and abuse to the tune of 31 to 60 billion dollars in Iraq and Afghanistan, along with repeated failures to meet contracted performance standards, jeopardizing U.S. defense, diplomatic, and development missions. And all of this is U.S. security. Okay. Now, in large part, this is due to war profiteering, which by definition is the act of an individual or company making an unreasonable, excessive financial gain from selling war related goods or services during wartime. All right. Actually, it doesn't have to be during wartime. It can be during peace in the United States. Because why? The U.S. has a permanent military war economy, right? A permanent military war establishment too. All right. So I'll put that. Yeah. It's also peace in the USA because we got a permanent war economy. All right. In recent U.S. wars, the first Gulf War being the first log cap war, and the Iraq invasion war being the first big private military security contractor war, war profiteering was conducted by Halliburton and its subsidiary KBR, Kellogg Brown Root. And I say this: there is obvious and absolute conflict of interest involved in the Bush administration's decision to go to war and to sacrifice the lives of U.S. soldiers, given the fact that given just one fact, given uh, all right, among many, right? KBR is a subsidiary of Halliburton. They're the same company, and they're owned by Dresser Industries, which is a Bush company. It's a Bonesman company, owned by Brown Brothers Harriman Bank, right? Who's the partners of that? All the same Bonesman buddies, the Power Club, which is a U.S. Power Elite Bonesman Club. Bush, you know, Prescott Bush was director of Dresser Industries. George H.W. Bush worked for Dresser Industries. Neil Mallon, another Bonesman, was CEO of Dresser Industries. All the Bonesmen were partners of Brown Brothers Harriman. And then Cheney was the CEO of Halliburton. Right. All right. So yeah, remember this diagram, Bonesmen, how they're involved. They're key guys in starting all the damn wars in the 20th century, right? And the first Gulf War being the first big logistical civilian augmentation program war, and then the second Gulf War being the first war where you had a lot of mercenaries, the private military security contractors, right? Now, this conflict of interest and their profit motive explains, in part, the Bush administration's lying manipulation of the U.S. public and Congress into the recent Iraq invasion war, in which they used two key lies. One was the fear of weapons of mass destruction, which did not exist, and which the U.S. sabotaged efforts to find for 7 years between 1991 and 1998, right? And then the 9/11 attacks, which were conducted by Al Qaeda, not Iraq. But yet, all that fear and justification for the war was dumped upon Iraq, All right. Recall the two main lies and the bait and switch deception. So they use these two lies in conjunction with this clever deception, utilizing the 1 year anniversary with 9/11. So all that fear is reactivated, and then they pump it up more with all the fear of WMD, how it's going to be so much worse than 9/11. You think this was bad, it's going to be 1,000 times worse, and time is running out, and we need this resolution because it's going to keep us safe. Then you put the vote for the resolution right here, right before the congressional recess, where they leave Washington. Right, they can't vote on it after this. Then they go home for the last 3 weeks to campaign, which is the most critical time in a campaign cycle. The last 3 weeks, right? That's when you sway voters the most, right? People, especially people on on the fence, and then you use the congressional election as your arm twisting, as an arm behind the back, and you're jacking it up, and you better vote for this or you're not going to get elected. Right? You'd be kicked out on the street. So war profiting only explains the decision to go to war in part because, as I've shown you in the last lecture, there are far more ways of making money off of war. And I'm not going to review it all. I hope a lot of this stuff is remembered, right? But there's many ways of making money off of war, right? War is and the problem with this is, it's not like the whole country's making this money. All this is highly concentrated. It's called hydrological engineering. How you control the stream of flow of revenues, of resources towards you, so that you concentrate the profits. Well, warfare is one way of doing it. Right? It's not like groceries, where the profits are highly dispersed, right? Or some other, goods, right? Warfare is different. There's certain ones like warfare where it's highly concentrated. All right, so today much of war's profiteering is conducted through LOGCAP and private military security contractors. LOGCAP stands for Logistics, that's a log, Civilian Augmentation Program. Right? Fancy word for privatization of logistics. So PMSC is private military security contractors, and they're mercenaries, right? We'll talk about this tomorrow. I'm not going to combine these together. The first big LOGCAP war was the first Gulf War. I mean, there was a study done. I think the study was done by Halliburton, believe it or not, as I recall. Right? Oh yeah, it's going to be good. I think no, that was the study for private military security contractors. Right, and also, as I recall, Cheney was the one who gave the contract to Halliburton. Hey, study this is going to be good. I don't know, we're going to profit off it, so yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be great. All right, how about that? So the first big private military security contract war is the Iraq Invasion War, right? All right, so I showed you that, right? Okay, first Gulf War. Halliburton, private LOGCAP. Second Gulf War, LOGCAP again, but also you're getting, private military security contractors making money another way. Right here, remember I talked about that right here, right? LOGCAP, private military security contractors. Okay. So here's LOGCAP. What type of things are done? Well, feeding the troops, building bases, building barracks, housing for troops, including tents. All right. Providing pure fresh water, providing fuel, transporting troops and material, providing electricity, laundry services, recreational facilities, whatever. Everything you need. Outhouses, showers, all that stuff, right? Okay. And then private military security contractors are mercenaries. They're not professional soldiers. Oh, my ass. These guys are so bad. In general. All right, so here's World War II pictures. Barracks. Here's a truck convoy, right? Dining hall, right? Here's a fuel truck. Here's laundry services, mobile laundry service. This is actually World War One, right? They had these back then, right? Now these were all done by the military itself. Supply Corps, mostly Army Corps of Engineers here, maybe, right? There's all Supply Corps, Supply Corps, Supply Corps, Supply Corps, right? Right. And now, prior to recent U.S. wars, like the two wars I told you about, the first Gulf War, Iraq Invasion War, the U.S. military provided the vast majority of these services. I mean, you could say that there was civilian help always, right? And to a certain extent, there was, right? But the lion's share was done by the Army itself, and it was done for pennies on the dollar compared to private firms today, right? That charge outrageous prices, jacked up prices. I mean, that sounds like it's biased, right? But man, you see the numbers. It is so. They jack up prices like crazy, unreasonable. Why? Because they get a no bid contract. There's no competition. Why? Because they get a cost plus contract where it gives them incentive to jack it up. So here's much of the excessive cost, waste, fraud, and abuse were due to two main types of contracts. Which favorite companies got? Which Halliburton KBR got? All right. No bid contracts which are non-competitive, involving favoritism and resulting in exorbitant prices with terrible, poor products and services. So the idea behind, ideal capitalism can be so crappy though, because people are corrupt. But ideally, it can work, right? Capitalism is effective as long as you get free enterprise, you get maximization of incentive, right? You unleash human productivity and creativity and ingenuity. All that stuff is good, right? Right. Those are the best parts of capitalism, right? Right. But all this is also capitalism, cronyism, corruption, right? That's why you got to control this. Competition creates efficiency, right? Which is product quality over price. So the more efficient it is, you get a better product for a cheaper price. Well, everyone wants that. Something better for less, right? You know, pure capitalist competition gets you that, right? Cost plus contracts, which encourage waste and fraud by making it profitable, right? The more you spend, the more your cost, right? The more profit you get. So you profit. Your profit is a percentage of your cost. Therefore, it's in your interest to spend more and waste more money. Therefore, it is in their interest to spend more and waste more money because they profit it. Because they profit off of it. The more money they waste, the more money they get. Because the way the contract's set up is, hey, you go spend whatever you need to spend, and you get a percentage on that. So what do? They spend as much as they can, as wasteful as they can, because that's going to make them more money. Who would get a contract like that? Who would give out a contract like that? Right? I mean, there's a lot of politics and power involved here. And there's politics and power involved with these guys, the power elite, right? Damn bonesmen starting all these damn wars, getting all the contracts. All right, so I mean, honestly, I don't care about the money. From my perspective, I really don't care about the money. I care more about the devastation to humans that come with these wars. All right. Okay, so now here's the outline. First, we'll examine the testimony of Charles M. Smith, who was the chief of field support contracting for the U.S. Army between 2000 and 2004, late 2004. His insights are from his book, War for Profit, Army Contracting versus Supporting the Troops. Right? Recall, that's pretty much my theme here. Right? It's about war profiting as opposed to supporting the troops. These are in opposition. Right? I mean, supporting the troops should be number one. And he provides insights and background on how corruption in log cap contracting jeopardized U.S. strategic goals and the lives of U.S. soldiers, how the Bush administration was planning for the invasion and doling out contracts months before they manipulated the nation into the Iraq invasion war resolution, which was timed with the one-year anniversary of 9/11. Right? Remember, that's part of the manipulation. Time it with that. How politics and power dominate military support contracting. Right? How some examples of KBR fraud, waste, and abuse. Then, second, I will examine some specific examples of Halliburton KBR fraud, waste, and corruption. How cost-plus contracting inherently produces waste, fraud, and abuse. How no-bid contracting involves favoritism and zero competition, resulting in gross overpricing with horrible products and, piss-poor performance. Example of outright theft and cheating by Halliburton KBR. Lastly, we'll talk about private military security contractors. I'll probably get to that tomorrow because I'm just too tired. Other quotes from Charles N. Smith books: War for Profit, Army Contracting Support. All right, so let's read a few of these quotes. So here's a quote, page 3, right at the front. From 2000 to late 2004, I was Chief of Field Support Contracting for the Army. I managed $5 billion per year logistical civilian augmentation program contract, which provided support to all troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was eventually fired from this position due to disagreements with senior Army leaders over treatment of log cap contractor KBR. Right? How KBR got no bid contracts. How KBR was allowed to cheat, no problem. How KBR was not, audited, right? And you'll see all this stuff. So Smith was eventually fired because he fought against the corruption and favoritism given to KBR. When contracts are mishandled, U.S. strategic goals and servicemen's lives are put at risk, right? While private pockets are lined and millionaires made, right? Now, the average American may think, "Oh no, Americans won't do that." Man, this is old history. Just look at the Civil War, right? The Civil War was the first big war where you had all these war profiteers, right? It was well known. Just look it up on Google search. Civil War and war profiteering. This is where everyone first learned about how these profiteers get all these contracts, how they provide crappy goods. In fact, the term shoddy? That came from the Civil War profiteers. They provided crap goods at high prices, made themselves rich, right? You don't think people won't do this. There's always people out there who will put themselves before anyone else just to get rich. All right. So I say a bunch of stuff here. I'm going to skip that. So now, in this quote, you have Iraq oil production restoration goal in 2002. In early November of 2002, right? Maybe this is like 8 months after 9/11. Oh, actually, no, like a year after 9/11. Oh, this is shortly after we got the Iraq war resolution vote. Okay, so right after we got the war resolution vote, this occurred. Months before the war, a group chaired by Michael Mobbs, comprised of former oil company executives, right? So keep in mind, they're about restoring oil, right? Infrastructure in Iraq. But you got CIA involved, okay? You got State Department involved. DOD officials met to plan Iraq oil reconstruction. Quote, they seem to accept as fact that a war with Iraq would take place, right? Fact. It's going to happen. Their mission was not just to put out fires, as it had been the first Gulf War, but to restore Iraq oil production, okay? So one, this shows that to reconstruct Iraq oil industry, you got to first invade Iraq. That's why, right? This means that as soon as the Bush administration manipulated Congress and the public into the resolution authorizing the president to use military force, they were going to use it to start a war. Right? And, anyone who knows anything about U.S. history knows that as soon as you get that, you got a war. Right? You authorize the president to use military force. He's got every authority to start a war. All right. Not every resolution results in wars, but I tell you what, 3 times you get a resolution, right? Just like Gulf of Tonkin, that was all set up, as you recall. This clearly shows that oil was a motive. So oil was a motive in this invasion. They're planning to restart their oil production before they invade. It's part of the plan. It's part of why we invade. And then favored companies, Halliburton KBR, would get the contract. Right? That's one of the reasons. This contract was one of the reasons why Smith got fired. Right? It was clear that the administration had planned to go to war in Iraq in the summer of 2002. So Smith is saying, man, it was before November. This is the summer they're going to war. Whether I agreed or not, this was going to happen, and it was going to involve the thousands of U.S. soldiers. My job was to provide support for them in any way possible. So they're planning this already. Before the whole big WMD, right? Before the anniversary of 9/11 and the manipulation scheme, the bait and switch, right? They're determined to go to war in the summer before this. And Smith knows the logistical wheels are turning. Why? Because he's in charge of this logistical wheels, right? He knows they're going to war. Logistically, we're getting ready to go to war. All right. As the war approached, we were asked to write the order that would assign the mission reconstructing Iraq oil production to KBR. At this point, I balked. We could do that, but not as a task order within the scope of LOGCAP. Some official would have to sign a justification document stating why only KBR could do this missions. We thought this would be hard to justify, as we had done market research and identified several companies who could perform this work. I assured the teams we could do a quick secret solicitation and have a contractor ready for the operation. Secret, because this is all before the war. Shortly after stating this position, I was informed that the Army Corps of Engineers would execute the contract. Later, Miss Bunatine Greenhouse, the highest ranking contracting official at the Corps, that's Army Corps of Engineers, lost her position because she also agreed that it was not valid requirement to merely assign this to KBR, right? Oh, but man, KBR is a connected company, like Bechtel, Halliburton. She recommended 1-year contract with competition to follow. This was absolutely the right call, but the court punished her for making it. Miss Greenhouse is an exceptional public servant who retains my admiration for her actions. She was fired, right? So Smith was fired because he resisted, but right, you just get pushed aside, right? I mean, you're talking, no one's saying Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz here, but they're saying it's Army, higher ups like Secretary of the Army, like Chief of Staff of the Army. Oh, this is coming from Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz. It's coming from on high, right? They're just pushing these guys out of the way. You don't want to play along, you're just pushed out of the way. So Smith, the Chief of Army Field Support Contracting, was asked to write a no-bid contract to KBR for oil reconstruction, and he had reservations. Army Chief Corps of Engineer Miss Bunting did likewise, right? Both of them would be fired. All right. So we spent too much on LOGCAP support. We paid KBR unsupported and unreasonable costs and unearned award fees. We did not provide the proper oversight of LOGCAP 3 to ensure our troops receive effective and efficient support. By wasting this money, we deprived the troops of other needed support. Right? U.S. troops suffer for KBR greed, theft, and corruption. I mean, that's what it is. This is greed, graft, theft, and corruption. Right? Connected companies. And you know these are patriotic guys. These are leaders, right? Oh my ass! You think they care about the American soldier, right? They started a damn war where it was unnecessary. Put them at risk. Get them killed. It's just sickening. I reached the conclusion that the Army decisions were extremely beneficial to the contractor KBR, right, Kellogg Brown Root, but these decisions were made at the expense of soldier support and the taxpayer. The taxpayers paying for this stuff in the end. Soldiers doing the real sacrifice, and U.S. taxpayers get screwed so that KBR can get ungodly wealthy rich. Ungodly wealth. I mean, this is just, this is blood money as far as I'm concerned. 2007 contracts for services, 152 billion versus hardware procurement, 142 billion. So this is what Smith says. This was the first time the Pentagon spent more on services than on hardware. This trend is okay. So what that means is they're spending more on whatever food and recreation, laundry, than on weapons, planes, bombs, right? Bullets, right? Is that because they're providing better? No, they're getting screwed here. You got private companies making the money here. Services is log cap. That's where the money's being made in today's privatized war, right? And again, it's about hydrological engineering. You steer that money towards you. Why? Because you got a connected company. You got political power. You got the company, right? You get the contracts for your damn company. How hard is that? Well, I mean, it's going to be impossible for anyone else, but not for these guys, not for the power elite. In 2004, the Army was overrun by KBR. Leaders attempting to enforce the Log Cap 3 contract in the interest of the Army were pushed aside. That means they're fired. Defense Contract Audit Agency audits were ignored as unsupported costs were accepted for the purpose of setting fees. High award fees were paid to KBR while Army ignored any reports of poor performance. Unreasonable dining facility costs were shielded from DCAA post-contract audit. In the process, soldiers were denied the benefit of wasted resources. KBR was made whole from their own mistakes, and Halliburton saw its stocks rise. KBR got filthy rich at the expense of U.S. soldiers who were doing the real suffering, sacrifice, and dying there, right? These guys are just making money here. These guys are doing the real sacrifice. KBR purchasing abuses. KBR was running their regional purchasing from the resort. That's a Khalifi resort, right? Plush place, right? The more money spent there, right, the more money KBR would make. I visited the operation, found it to be poorly organized and chaotic. This later became a major problem during the DCAA auditing of KBR purchasing, as records were hard to find. They're not keeping records. As far as anyone knows, they're destroying records. If they could be found at all. A KBR purchasing agent, Henry Bunting, testified before Senator Byron Dorgan's Senate Democratic Policy Committee about the abuse he found in this operation. Many purchases were non-competitive when competition would have reduced the cost. KBR evidently worked to avoid DCAA auditors. Okay, that's just more KBR abuses. So this is from his book right here. Specific examples of waste, fraud, and abuse. So the Commission on Wartime Contracting study found, I talked about this already, right? There's massive waste, fraud, abuse to the tune of 31 to 60 billion. 60 billion is the total cost for the first Gulf War, as entirely, right? This is a lot of money, 60 billion. So this is just waste, not the whole cost of a whole damn war. 60 billion was the whole cost, U.S. cost for the first Gulf War. And this is just waste. That's crazy. 1.8 billion in unsupported feeding fees alone, right? So here's cost plus contracts encourage driving up costs through waste, fraud, and abuse. Remember, cost plus doesn't matter what your cost is, right? You pay whatever, you spend whatever you think you need. Then you get paid on top of that, a percentage. So whatever you spend, you get 10% on top of that. Let's say five, whatever it is, right? Well, it's in your interest to spend as much as you can, waste as much as you can, because you're going to get paid more. So here are some examples. Halliburton KBR got paid for acquiring unnecessary Escalades and H2 Hummers, right? Right? You know, was it necessary that these personnel who were usually at these bases got these Hummers, or leased them for $7,000 a month, right? Now, to today's prices, I just looked up leasing costs on the internet, right? In 2020, not 2003, right? Per month for an Escalade, $299 to $699, right? So this is at best 10 times more, right? In not taking into account difference in dollar value, right? To over 20 times more, right? Now, who's charging $7,000 a month? I don't know, but any money, it's a Halliburton company. They probably set up a car leasing company, so they're paying themselves $7,000 a month, right? Any money, they set up their own car leasing company, and they pay themselves a crazy car, and then they get paid for paying so much, right? I mean, what competitive company would charge $7,000 a month for a car, right? When today's prices, it's far less. So, I mean, I don't know, but any money, it's a Halliburton company that's leasing the cars, right? So they're paying themselves, and then they get paid on top of this for paying this exorbitant price. They get paid a percentage of this. And then the next thing is they don't provide oil change materials. So these cars, you go 10,000 miles without changing oil, that engine breaks down, right? What do? Do they send it to the shop, rebuild the engine, replace the engine, buy new? No, they just burnt the damn car. Paid for the car. Oh, and then they get paid for paying for the car. And then they get a new car. Right? I mean, who sets up a cost plus contract? I mean, you got to be politically connected to get a cost plus contract. Right? It just encourages waste, fraud, and abuse. Then Halliburton got paid for ordering wrong equipment. So it's the same situation. They ordered all sorts of computer equipment. Ungodly amount. Oh, we ordered the wrong computers. Well, why were they? Could you make them work? Oh, no, we couldn't, right? So what did they do with it? Did they send it back to the... No, they burned them. Brand new computers, dug a pit, burned them all, poured gasoline on it, right? Got paid for those. And then bought new ones. Got paid for that. What a racket. Who's paying for this? I mean, you are. Taxpayers. Right? I mean, this should burn you up. And this is a Bush Cheney company. The guys who start the war. Oh, that's not conflict of interest. Okay. KBR Halliburton would send empty trucks in a convoy because they got paid for truckload. Right? All the while, these truckers are making a lot more than they would normally make, right? But they're putting their lives on the line. Right? They're facing IEDs. You got these insurgents because we invaded the damn country. They're sending bombs, blowing up convoys, whatever, right? Right? They're risking their lives. Are they risking their lives to support the troops? No! They're driving an empty truck. So Halliburton can get more money. KBR can get more money. Oh, man. So this is a quote from Smith. Quote, later investigation revealed a serious problem which was costing the Army needed funds. A KBR employee who had commanded over 100 convoys stated that they often took an empty trailer to a location and then picked up an empty trailer for the return trip. So it's not like they needed the empty, container, right? Right? There's a round trip for empty containers. Trailers that could hold 20. Here's another thing. Trailers that could hold 26 full pallets ran with only one pallet on board. Right? At times, 1 in 3 trailers was empty. They're padding, right? And here's another. Halliburton KBR would pad their payrolls with unnecessary contractors. These contractors are getting paid a lot of money. And Halliburton's getting paid a lot more money than that. Right? And they would hire these guys for no reason. Some of these guys did nothing. Right? They didn't have jobs. They sat around doing nothing, getting paid. Why? Because Halliburton KBR got paid a lot more. They just increased their profits. And then here's the resort. The Khalifi Resort was plush. It was like a 5-star hotel, right? The more you blow money there, well, that's your cost. You get paid for wasting as much money as you can. No bid contract. I mean, they built a whole big resort out there, from what I recall, right? They had wave runners, I don't know. Probably had real mariachi bands from Mexico. No, they got it probably to the U.S. because they cost more. No bid contracts that encourage both exorbitant pricing and terrible performance. All right. So $36 for a case of Coke, made in the region. It's not like they shipped this from like Colorado or, from, I don't know, wherever they make Coke. All right. This came from locally. Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or whatever, right? So how much does a case of Coke cost here? What, about $6, $7, right? And then $99 for a bag of laundry. $99, right? I guess they didn't want to push the triple digit thing there, right? I mean, you got a large operation. You got an operation like this, right? This is in the field, World War I. It's costing pennies, right? Maybe cost $1 to do a bag of laundry. You get some private, right, running this. He's getting paid dirt, right? Right? All right. I bet you can do this for $1, maybe no more than $2, and they're getting $99, right? Oh, privatizing is more efficient. Oh, my ass, right? You get no bid contracts to do this, right? And then this goes back to the Gulf War, first Gulf War. And I knew this back then. Back in 1990-91, right? 30 years ago, dialed about $10,000 to transport one soldier per person to Saudi Arabia, one way with a packed plane. Right? Now, today's about, I just priced it, $20. United Airlines charges $960 for a round trip. That's two-way ticket from New York to Israel. That's about the same as Saudi Arabia, right? It's not a packed plane. There's empty seats. This is packed, wall to wall. If dollar value were half, back then, what it is today, right? Or what it is back then, right? 10,000. You're looking at 40 times more. 40 times more the cost, right? I mean, it's outrageous. Halliburton paid for water treatment for cooking, cleaning, and showering. Now, so they're getting paid to provide clean water treatment, right? And there were spot audits of contamination. 63 out of 67 water treatment plant tests failed contaminated tests. Water tests show 0 chlorine in the water and extreme contamination with typhus, malaria, giardia, cryptosporidium. All right. Now, according to Smith, in February 2005, tests on KBR, quote, purified water used in dining facilities, showers, and laundry showed 0 chlorine levels, and water tanks were left open to air contamination. All right. Okay, yeah. You doing the soldiers any failure subjecting to this contamination? I mean, just having to take a shower and this stuff. All right. Let's see. Which of those get I mean, some of these things go through your skin. Which ones go through your skin? Does malaria go through your skin? You got to drink malaria, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, cryptosporidium, you got to ingest that too. Cryptosporidium is a mold, I believe. Okay, now due to Halliburton's contaminated water, soldiers had to drink bottled water provided by Halliburton. And I don't know the exact price, but you know, if you're looking at these prices, you know they're jacking up the price for bottled water. So because of their crappy contaminant, right? Oh, they're making more money providing bottled water at an even higher price. Right? You think this is not a scam? U.S. military has 24/7 feeding schedule. To save money, KBR Halliburton held only at traditional times, forcing soldiers to stand outside in long lines out in the open, in bases, which increased mortar attacks during meals. All right. So, think about it. You gotta even let's say it's a green zone. Okay. You got a dining facility, right? You're only serving lunch, at like noon to 1 o'clock or whatever, 11 to 2 maybe, right? You get all these personnel having to use a small, the same dining facility, all these military people. You got a lot of people standing out line, right? Well, that's when you whack it with mortars, right? And these mortar teams were like, hit and run sapper teams. You got a car, you just get any car you want, any sedan, right? You put a 60 millimeter mortar. That's all you got to do in the trunk, right? You get the mortar set up. You got it dialed in, right? You got someone who's working on the base, some Iraqi who's civilian there, who's working. He marches out. He steps out the distance from the line where they typically line up to the wall of the compound, and then they get the distance from the wall to a place where they're going to set up, right? Some street corner or whatever, somewhere, I don't know, right? And then they haul up, right? Jump out of the car, set up the mortar within less than a minute, pop off a dozen rounds in less than a minute, all right? And then pack it up and run away. You can't catch these guys, right? It's hard to catch these guys unless you get. I mean, they got any money. They got their lookouts, right? From blocks around, right? They're all talking on the same communication, whatever, right? You see a U.S. patrol coming by. Well, you pack it up. They're ghosts. They're hard to get, right? Yeah, you put American lives at risk. Halliburton provided tents that were full of mold. All right. All right. Outright theft and cheating by Halliburton. So this comes from Smith, right? Documents KBR unsubstantiated charges for dining services, receiving 92% performance fees. Right? How much you get paid is based upon you get paid more for high performance. Well, they had no performance evaluation. How did they get a 92% ranking when there was no performance evaluation? Well, it's because they're KBR, right? A politically connected company. KBR was not serving the number of meals contracted for, resulting in U.S. government overpaying by 20%. That's probably $1.8 billion here. Smith found that KBR was charging twice as much per meal than the British were paying. Now, this is legitimate costs. The legitimate costs were a ripoff. Twice as much as what the British were paying. All right? Well, you think they grow food cheaper in Great Britain? Any money, it's cheaper than in the U.S. The Association of Certified, U.S. manufacturing, you damn cheap farmers are pretty efficient, right? The Association of Certified Fraud Examiners were asked to conduct an audit and found 7% of all spending was lost in fraud in Iraq and Afghanistan. All right, that seems kind of low, but all right. All spending, I guess that includes everything. So that's still a lot. That's huge. 7% of everything is monstrous. Smith cites numerous cases of bribery, kickbacks, fraud in 10 pages here, 87 to 96. That's 10 pages. Vice President Cheney's office coordinated Halliburton's getting Iraq's reconstruction contracts. His office coordinated it. Don't forget that Halliburton, KBR, Bechtel Back in the first Gulf War, they monopolized all Kuwait reconstruction, right? They monopolized all the log cap back then, right? You got favored companies. So now, all of this that I showed you, right, is that the American way? Right? The American way is free market. The American way is free enterprise. The American way is competition to get the best possible product at the lowest price. All this is the exact opposite. It's anti-free market, anti-free enterprise, anti-free competition, which is totally un-American. And these guys are flag-waving politicians, right? You think they really care about America? They care about themselves. And all this is entirely unpatriotic, done by people who wave the flag to manipulate the masses into a patriotic fervor, which is, in reality, nothing more than ego-satisfying, self-serving, self-gratification. I swear I cannot stand patriotic people, right? They're such lowlifes. They don't care about what's really just and right and godly, what's right before God. They care about making themselves feel good. USA, my country, me. Right? And then they let these guys get away with all this stuff. So they can wave the flag and feel good about themselves. How pathetic is that? Are they profiting off of this? No. I mean, it's blood money as it is. I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't get, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It would just make me sick. All right. Okay, that's it for that lecture. So, war profiteering versus supporting the troops. Right? So the guys that brought us a war, they made a killing off of the war. No pun intended. All right.